Everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We've got a great Q&A lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about home remedies for aches and pains. So if you've got questions that you want to get answers to around what you can do naturally to overcome aches, pains, joint pain, nerve pain, muscle pain, headache pain, whatever you've got in your arsenal of hurts, bring those questions to me now. So type those in if you'd like me to answer them today during the show. And of course, don't forget to visit our sponsor, Gluten-Free Society. Gluten-Free Society is your #1 resource for all things gluten-free, grain-free, allergy-free. We've got recipes there, we've got articles and thousands of video tutorials that you can navigate and push through to learn more about natural healing. So that's glutenfreesociety.org. This week, you can save $8 on the Musclelies formulation. So you want to check that out. We'll put a link in the feed for you, but you just use promo code EASE, E-A-S-E. So let's dive into today's questions. We've got a lot of them lining up. So, and the first one, I don't know if you're serious, Dennis, or not. Can stiff muscles be due to rigor mortis? Rigor mortis is not in a living person. So there's stiff person syndrome, right? Which is typically an autoimmune process, and it occurs within the muscle, and it causes a person to be very, very stiff and causes the muscles to lock down. So it can make it very hard for a person to move, stretch, and be physically active. We wouldn't call that rigor mortis, though. The term mortis means death, right? So rigor mortis is actually defined as the stiffness that occurs post-mortem or after someone passes away. Misconstrue wants to know about low alkaline phosphatase. So this is a test, ALP, alkaline phosphatase, typically it's a test that is on a standard chemistry panel that most doctors order when you go in for like an annual checkup. And if you have a low alkaline phosphatase, it's not a very great accurate indicator to assess overall body nutrition. Now there's some things that it can mean. So as an example, low alkaline phosphatase can mean that a person is going to have a higher predilection or predisposition to mineral deficiency, particularly zinc. But it's not a set in stone type of marker. So you wouldn't look at a low alkaline phosphatase and think, gosh, that person's low in zinc, automatically, instantly give them 100 milligrams of zinc. It's a clue or an insight, but it's not a definitive. Now, low alkaline phosphatase can also indicate low stomach acid production and poor ability to digest or absorb the minerals from your food. And so some people with chronically low alk phos do really well taking an acid supplement, something like our formula Ultra Acid, which contains a number of different things, but betaine hydrochloride and gentian root being two of the ingredients. And so this in turn helps to put a little bit of acid on the stomach before a meal to help support the digestion of that meal, especially if you're eating any amount of animal proteins or heavier animal proteins. Okay. Eczema flare, very painful. I had a cream with shea, coconut, lavender, tea tree, and frankincense, and I'm wearing gloves. Don't see the question there, Betty. So if you're asking if there's anything else more that you can do in that regard, that sounds like a good idea. What you're already doing, using Histassist, sounds like you're also doing that as well. But then the other thing that you might consider naturally is mixing higher amounts. So Histassist is great. It's a synergistic formula that contains quercetin and NAC and vitamin C, among other ingredients, but you might consider taking even higher doses of vitamin C mixed with quercetin. The combination of those two are very synergistic and can help modulate inflammation. You might also consider having an omega-3, a couple of grams, 2 grams of omega-3 fatty acid, something like Omega Max would be a good product to use in that regard. And then again, and I'll iterate this, any of you struggling with chronic inflammatory pain should be looking at diet change, period. And the best diet to do, if you haven't had any kind of testing done to determine what the best diet is for you, is the no grain, no pain diet, particularly phase 2 of the diet. As a matter of fact, let's just do a quick poll. How many of you listening today or watching today, chime in the chat box, how many of you have followed no grain, no pain and found remarkable benefit or improvement in your aches, pains, or other ailments? Love to hear from you and hear your story. Let's see. Teddy, what can I use for osteoarthritis pain and stiffness in my hands, and also pain and numbness in both hands and feet due to microvasculitis? Okay, so osteoarthritis, one of the best things that you can supplement with, in my opinion, is glucosamine chondroitin. We have a formula, Teddy. It's called Joint, Ultra Joint. And so that's for the osteoarthritis. Now, if we're talking about stiffness in the hands, stiffness in the hands is usually an indicator of an underlying source of chronic inflammation. And so you got to find out what the source of that underlying chronic inflammation could be. And again, for a lot of people, it's food. And so I would start there first because that's low-hanging fruit. So again, going back to no grain, no pain, if you haven't already implemented that diet, ideally you should. Now, the numbness in the hands and feet, that neuropathy, and that way, it depends on why the neuropathy is there, but if it's there also, sometimes the neuropathy in the hands can be from the swelling, and that can put pressure on the nerve that comes in through the carpal tunnel and feeds the hand, and that can cause numbness and tingling to occur in the hand. And so in that regard, make sure you're getting adequate B vitamins, especially vitamin B6. Vitamin B6 is a natural diuretic, so it can, in many cases, can help people with their swelling in that way. Beyond that, you can also look at formulations like alpha lipoic acid. We have something called Alpha Max that might be helpful in that regard, which is a high dose, high potency alpha lipoic acid blend that is designed to support nerve regeneration and nerve health. So you can definitely check that out as well. Melanie is asking, would a binder such as bentonite clay or activated charcoal help to bind and remove high glucose? No, it would not. Binders don't really do much at all for high glucose. Looking for help when waiting for insulin to kick in. So I would assume, Melanie, are you a type 1 diabetic? If that's, I mean, that makes sense to me if that's because your comment, waiting for the insulin to kick in. So if you're looking for help waiting for the insulin to kick in, one of the things that I would suggest that you look into doing, at least short term, is a continuous glucose monitor so that you can really tightly understand which foods affect your blood sugar and how exercise affects your blood sugar. And, just kind of tracking and mapping what happens with your blood sugar so that you can, again, with type 1 diabetics, it's all about the timing. It's learning about the timing of when to properly use your insulin, where it basically kicks in before it needs to kick in the sense you're not hitting these massive highs and lows in your blood sugar. And so a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, might really help tremendously in that regard. Something else you can consider if you're looking for something that just it supports glucose metabolism and healthy blood sugar levels is berberine. Berberine is, think of it as Mother Nature's metformin. A lot of doctors with diabetics, and I know you're type 1, but a lot of doctors will use a drug called metformin, which is an insulin sensitizer, and berberine has a similar effect. You might also ask your doctor to measure your chromium levels because chromium regulates blood glucose. And so chromium's nickname is the glucose tolerance factor because of its important role that it plays as being part of the insulin receptor. So if you want your insulin to work efficiently, right, you have to make sure that you have adequate chromium. You also have to make sure you have adequate vitamin B3. Okay, let's see here. We've got a lot of, I don't know what all that is. Frowny faces. Let's scroll back up a little bit. It's a lot of you answering the question. Those been helped by no grain, no pain. A lot of people saying yes. So again, any of you who haven't embarked on that journey, on that diet change, I would highly encourage you to jump in to that as well. Let's look at our FB feed. How much SPM can one use to reduce inflammation, and should it be taken with fish oil or can be taken alone? It can be taken either way, Peruse. So you can have, with SPM, generally depending on what you're talking about, they usually come in like 500 milligram pearls. But anywhere between 1 and 3 of those pearls, if they're in that 500 milligram range, can be effective at helping support inflammation. It can be taken as well with fish oil. Remember, one of the end fates of EPA and DHA is SPM. Those of you that know what SPM is, it's specialized pro-resolvin mediators, and so it's a byproduct of omega-3 fat downstream that actually helps the body to modulate inflammation. You got to be really careful with SPMs. They can be effective, but a lot of the products on the market contain corn, and I have seen people using them and their pain levels go up as a result of getting exposure unknowingly to that corn. Let's see here. Lisa wants to know, what about degenerative medial meniscal tear? Okay. And then I'm not sure what you mean by TIA, because in medicine, TIA is typically an acronym for transient ischemic attack. And if you're asking me about both of those things, just clarify for me. But for medial meniscal tears, you've got to have adequate protein to lay down the groundwork for healing and repair. So number one, with a medial meniscal tear, you've got to get the right type of physical therapy follow-up, where you're doing the right kinds of exercises and stretches to support the regrowth and the reconnection of that tissue. Now, if you're talking about nutrition, we want to make sure that you've got one of the things that can be very, very helpful, as I mentioned Tuesday, would be high dose vitamin C, 5 grams, and an adult of 150 pounds is about where we're trying to hit. And then the same with quercetin, about 4 grams of quercetin, same 150 pound adult. And then also you want to make sure your protein levels are about 1.8 to 2 grams of protein for every kilogram that you weigh. So if you're 70 kilos, for example, then you multiply that 70 kilos by 1.8 to 2, and that's how many grams of protein that you'd want to achieve in your diet on a daily basis. When you've got a tear, a tear like a tendinous or ligamentous or cartilaginous type of tear, you really have to ramp up the protein to give your body the building blocks that it needs to heal. The other thing that I would suggest in that case, though, would be a glucosamine chondroitin. That combination can be very, very helpful as well for the pain, for the swelling. Let's see, swollen inside right knee and inside right ankle, between ankle and heel. No reason that I know. Follow diet and supplement also. Do yoga 3 times a week. So swollen on the inside, so inside of the right knee. So if you mean inside, like inside the joint, or if you mean like inside as in the medial side of the knee, and then inside the right ankle. So I would, first and foremost, I think what I would do in that situation, if there's no trauma, that means there's either some type of, and I know you're following the diet, so if there's no dietary deviation or issue and there's no trauma, or no other discernible reason, I would look at posture and gait to see if you have a walk or the way that you move is imbalanced enough that it would create excessive pressure that it would put on the knee and the ankle on that side. Probably a good place to have that assessed would be a good chiropractor who can assess your gait. And a lot of chiropractors they're what are called certified chiropractic sports practitioners. So if you look for that kind of delineation, a lot of these guys, they do gait analysis and they really can go deep and dive deep on non-injury based types of pain where there's a gait imbalance or there's a muscular imbalance from left to right side. Robert says, why are doctors still hanging on to disease theory when the theory is purely a legal term and the body is not diseased? Well, I mean, Robert, I get it. I'm frustrated as you are. Here's why. The state of medicine is pretty much like this. You've got thousands and thousands of doctors that spent, $500,000 or so to go through medical school and undergrad. They went into it for the right reason. Most of them did. They wanted to help people. But by the time you get deep enough into the schooling and realize this isn't what I thought it might be, and you maybe even in some cases, I know a lot of doctors that personally communicate to me, they're very almost like a disgruntled or unhappy because they know that their advice is not helping people. They know that a lot of what they do doesn't work. I mean, look at the chronic model of disease treatment. It's completely failed to the tune of $4 trillion annually, and we don't really have anything to speak of it. We have more heart disease, more cancer, more diabetes, more autoimmune disease, more obesity, more osteoporosis, fill in the blank, right? Despite spending $4 trillion a year. But you've got these doctors who are in these practices who we have so much now red tape with governmental regulation, with the modern healthcare system now being more of a, unfortunately, being more of a kind of a socialized medicine, which waters down the quality of the type of doctors that come into it. And so you get mediocre doctors who are disgruntled with their education, who realize that what they do doesn't really help, but they don't know what else to do because the business model in their practice, their group practice of 8 other doctors, or the hospital groups or the private corporations own these big hospitals, and the doctors are basically being handed orders, and there's very little autonomy left in medicine. That's why you saw in these last few years so much suppression of free information, and I mean freedom of speech type information from the medical community. A lot of them were scared to speak out because they were being handed orders from top down to not give good advice. And you have a system that people believe in but don't understand the underpinnings of the business model of that system, and so they think when they're going to the doctor, they're going to some really highly educated, highly intelligent person who understands how to fix health problems. And the reality is they don't understand how to fix health problems. They understand how to medicate the symptoms of health problems without actually digging into why the problem exists in the first place, or why the person became diseased, if you will. And that's pretty much where it's at. And if you understand that as a consumer, consuming health care becomes a conscientious decision. And so now you get to know that if you go to that doctor that's trained in medicine and surgery, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get symptom resolution through pharmaceutical intervention as the primary staple of care. And they're not going to talk to you about diet. They're not going to talk to you about exercise. They're not going to talk to you about stress. They're not going to talk to you about clean air, clean water, sunshine, or any other things that matter, that are core fundamentals to good health, because they don't have time. They got 50 people in the waiting room, and they give you 2 minutes, maybe 3. And so it's in and out with the pad, and then you're off to the pharmacy. And if you know that, now you get to choose. Do you want to participate in that model of care? And I think that's how we change this. We're not going to change the system that exists. We're going to change by not participating in that system if it doesn't fit our philosophical belief system. And we're going to change by speaking with our wallets. If you feed that beast will keep growing. But to me, that beast is long overdue for a budget cut at $4 trillion a year and abysmal outcomes. I think we could all do better. I think you could give a 2-year-old child $4 trillion and see better health outcomes than what we see. I think medicine, arguably medicine is at least the 3rd leading cause of death in industrialized countries, at least the 3rd leading cause of death. So you got cancer and heart disease, and then, according to researchers that published recently in the British Medical Journal and in JAMA, medicine is the 3rd leading cause of death, and not abuse of medicine, but the proper use of medicine. So we just got a system that is broken. It's unfixable, in my opinion. I don't think you fix that system. I think you walk away from it and let it have its death throes, and then a new system is created from the ashes of the old that is actually going to be productive and have outcomes that are meaningful, as opposed to financially meaningful, health meaningful. May's asking, can Musclelies help with damage to muscles and tendons from Cipro? No, if you want to, no. So that wouldn't be the right. I mean, it can help ease some of the pain symptomatically, but it isn't going to repair. Musclelies is more designed if you're really tight, if the muscle's really, really tight, spasmodic, if there's a lot of neurological, like referral type neurological pain, it's very good at helping. It's a formula that's more designed to ease the symptoms while you take corrective action so that the symptoms don't come back, right? So it's kind of, think of it as compassionate relief while you do other things to improve upon it. So if you're talking about Cipro-induced tendon damage, one of the most important things that you can start doing right away is a B complex. So strong, good B complex, something like B complete. And then the other thing that I would encourage you to start right away would be a very potent probiotic. My favorite being, in this case, being Ultrabiotic Defense, which is a powder you mix in water and drink. And it delivers several 100 billion colony-forming units of different strains of bacteria. And it's one of the reasons that Cipro induces its damage is because it damages the microbiome. And so there's with people that have that post-Cipro musculoskeletal damage, you can get leaky gut from the antibiotic itself, and then you get certain chemicals that can leak into the bloodstream, traverse, and they find their way into your muscles and tendons and create a lot of inflammation. So we want to seal the gut lining. We want to get good probiotics in, good B vitamins in, and then be patient. Now, the other thing you should probably consider is again, no grain, no pain, phase 2 diet, because that's a very potent anti-inflammatory diet. It's going to give your body the nourishment it needs to expedite the recovery as best as possible. So Chris wants to know, would you say fibromyalgia is a nervous system problem or a systemic problem? That's a great question, Chris. If we're talking about true fibromyalgia, it's a nervous system problem because it's a pain perception neurological issue as opposed to a musculoskeletal damage type of disorder. But a lot of people are misdiagnosed. So like their doctor just, oh, you hurt everywhere, well, we'll call it fibromyalgia. I mean, first of all, the diagnostic criteria for the disease is very subjective, to say the least. And so it depends. It depends on who gave the diagnosis and whether or not they were accurate. But true fibromyalgia is more of a neurological pain perception problem versus a myalgia, which is, again, a traditional myalgia is usually an autoimmune attack on the muscles, creating systemic muscle pain and tightness and stiffness. And they're both, the good news about them is it doesn't matter which one. Fibromyalgia and myalgia are both, ultimately, they're both best affected by diet and lifestyle change. And those changes are the same. Again, I go back to sound like a broken record today, but no grain, no pain. We've done thousands of cases of myalgia and fibromyalgia and found that the no grain, no pain diet works extremely well in both cases. And sometimes we'll hit plateaus in fibro. I think my experience with fibro cases, true fibro, is because it's neurological, it also comes with a lot of depression, and these individuals that have it lack the will or motivation to take meaningful action, and so they accept the illness and they embrace it as if it's a good friend that they want to walk through life with. And so in a lot of these cases, they just aren't willing to make the necessary changes because of the psychological depression that can come with it. Let's see, I'm celiac. Rita says, I'm celiac. I have stiffness and joint pain on and off. I'm not sure I see the question there. So if you're celiac, Rita, and you are following like a traditional gluten-free diet, one of the things that, this is very well published in medical literature, is that people following that traditional gluten-free diet, which is a wheat, barley, and rye-free diet, about 8% of them actually get better. The other 92% continue to struggle. And continue to have persistent health issues and problems, including joint pain. And one of the reasons why is that the gluten-free diet is not properly defined. Wheat, barley, and rye are not the only grains that contain gluten, even though food labeling laws would have you believe otherwise. If you buy gluten-free oats, gluten-free corn, gluten-free rice products, there are glutens in those products and those grains that can incite similar types of inflammation, just like wheat or barley or rye could. And so a lot of people who are celiac and don't know that are following that wheat, barley, rye-free diet, continue again to have persistent issues. So I would encourage you to get on a true gluten-free diet, which is a grain-free diet, and see if those things don't start to improve. Now, the other thing with the history of celiac disease is you probably have a malabsorption issue, or had one if you don't still, and that leads to a lot of micronutrient, vitamin, and mineral deficiencies. And so there may be some key deficiencies that you have that are allowing for the persistence of those symptoms. And so, it's very common, for example, to see people with a history of celiac, BP12, and iron deficient, And until you correct those deficiencies, they continue to have health struggles, you know, and iron deficiency, B12 deficiency can cause joint and muscle pain as well. Let's see here, Word Girl, other than gluten testing, is there a test that can measure blood viscosity to see if there are any blood clots forming? Yeah, so there's a test called fibrinogen, which is helpful. There's a test called D-dimer, D-dimer. You can also have prothrombin time checked. Prothrombin time is a measurement of how fast your blood or how slow your blood clots. And you can actually ask your doctor to measure viscosity. They can actually do a blood viscosity test. And so those are all things that any doctor can order that would help give you an idea as to whether or not you have an increased risk for excessive clot formation. Okay. Back to Rita finished up her question. I just didn't see it. So what would you recommend beyond fish oil and turmeric for joint pain and stiffness? Aside from diet change, in that scenario, I might look at dosing on the fish oil and seeing where, you know, what level you're taking. And same thing with turmeric. A lot of people don't take enough. So like fish oil, you'd start at 2 grams. You know, that's 2 grams of mixture, about an equal ratio of EPA and DHA. A lot of products out there are like 250 milligrams. So if you're taking 1 or 2, you're not getting much EPA, which is a regulator of inflammation. And so it's like, you know, almost like spitting on a forest fire. The dose is just not effective. So 2 grams plus, 2 to 4 grams is a good amount to look at. Now, if you're going to go above 2 grams, if you've got, you know, clotting disorder, if you've got that you've needed or your doctor's prescribed you with a blood thinner, then in those cases you definitely want to, you know, have that monitored. Don't just go it alone. Have, you know, let your doctor know what you want to do, and then go in there and have your clotting factors and your blood viscosity and your just like we talked about a minute ago, those things need to be measured. Best proteins for healing muscle tears. Food protein is ideal. You know, and so this is where it's very sad and unfortunate to see the rhetoric, you know, around the green movement, save the planet by not eating meat. That's kind of the pervasive message that's coming out right now, you know, in the world. The media is pushing it, government agencies are pushing it, even so-called health experts are starting to push it, and it's nonsense. It's all rhetoric, garbage, junk science. Not eating animal meat will cause malnutrition. Not eating animal meat will cause you to become sicker, and you need that protein, especially if you have pre-existing damage. You need the protein to heal, and the level of protein that you need is much higher than the general recommendations that, let's just say, the USDA recommends or the FDA recommends. They're recommending about 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is bordering on the order of magnitude of protein deficiency, in my opinion. You really want to have, if you're just baseline and you're healthy, you want to get at least 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. But if you're injured, you got to get it up there, you know, somewhere around 1.8 to 2. And some research even says even higher than that. And it's not, maybe not a permanent fix, but it's you know, short term to help your body have enough of the raw ingredient protein to heal the damage. The other thing you can do, you know, you can take extra collagen protein. You can do like grass-fed bone broth proteins. These are all good, like supplementals, if you just can't get that much on your plate. You know, some people have smaller stomachs, and a protein powder, you know, might go a long way for them. So those are things that I would definitely recommend if you're struggling with a chronic injury. Wondering why pyridoxine hydrochloride is included in the B complex as and multi, as I've read from many sources, that pyridoxine hydrochloride has negative side effects. Not really. I don't know what you've read, but I would argue that whatever you've read is probably somebody's opinion and rhetoric, and not really some actual scientific endeavor that that tried to parcel out whether pyridoxine hydrochloride was detrimental for its use. Pyridoxine hydrochloride is actually a good form of B6. Now, we actually mix in our products. We put some pyridoxine hydrochloride in it, and we also put something called pyridoxal 5-phosphate, which is a phosphorylated form of B6, and so they both have a purpose, in a good multi and in a good B vitamin for different reasons. Melanie says, extra inflammation from acute mold exposure, repair shop let rain in my car. Ooh, that's not good. Having muscle stiffness, aches, and sinus, any advice? So, stay out of your car. I mean, if your car's got mold in it to such a level that it's causing you think to be flared, then your car's a dangerous place to be. So, you might consider selling your car and getting a new one. You might consider having your car remediated. I would talk to the shop, repair shop, and I'd make them responsible for any damages to your car that that led to that. What do I think of pea protein? I think it's okay. It's not ideal if you're trying to really adhere to more of a plant-based diet. It can be an option for you, but you want to make sure it's organic, Rita, because a lot of those are not organic. And again, minimizing quantitatively how many pesticides you're being exposed to is just a smart approach. I like that. Dahl says, I just switched to carnivore diet after 5 years vegetarian. I feel so much better. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are moving in that direction. And not that I'm an advocate of a pure carnivore diet. I believe that humans are omnivores and we're designed to eat both. But I think some people have been, how do I say this? I think a lot of people have been brainwashed. And I think a lot of people have been mentally guilted into thinking they need to follow a heavier plant-based diet for their health. And I think a lot of the world is carbohydrate toxic. And so I think we see a lot of people that deviate from that, right, over to this carnivorous style of diet. They do much better because they're shifting away. And so the antidote, which is an all meat diet, is helps them feel better. Now, I would also argue that a lot of people that do really well carnivorously, when they switch over to carnivore, actually you fast forward 8-12 months in that line, you're able to really start introducing some fruits, some vegetables, some plant-based foods that are also beneficial. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't advocate for an all vegan diet, and I also do not advocate for an all carnivorous diet, although some people do better on more plant-based items and some people do more better on higher levels of meat. I'm one of them. I do much better when my diet is very high meat and lower vegetable, but I also don't do as well when there's no vegetable and there's no fiber and there's no there's no fruit. So I think it comes back to humans are genetically designed to be omnivorous. We eat both, right? We eat plants, we eat animals, and we have the digestive tracts and the fluids, if you will, to be able to do that mechanically, to tear and to use acid to degrade in the short stomachs, because we're not designed to ferment grass for long periods of time like a cow with multi-chambered stomach. So, I mean, the evidence is very clear that we're omnivores and that we should do both, and that's why it just disgusts me to see so much rhetoric about the guilt that, especially on the youth, because they're so susceptible. And so if you look at even in schoolhouses, they're like, the planet's dying, global warming is going to kill us all unless you go meat free, do your part. And it's just ridiculous. Anyway, we'll talk about that deeper in another show. Meat is so expensive, that's why I try to find alternatives. There are no alternatives, Rita. I mean, I get it. Inflation sucks. And what's happening right now in the world and the prices of everything going up is it's awful. What I would encourage you to do is find other people in your community who maybe can pull their money together and go in and buy, we call it cow sharing, right? Where you go in and you buy like a quarter of the animal from the farmer direct, and you save. It's about half as cheap or half as expensive when you go in with others and do that. There's also really good website called localharvest.org, where you can find local food co-ops and farmers that you can skip the grocery store markups and you can get food at a lot less of an exorbitant cost, moving through those types of organizations. And that's what I would encourage you to do, because it's more expensive to be unhealthy than it is to purchase meat. I'll say that. I mean, the vast majority of people that I see that come to me are spending, their medication bill, is thousands of dollars a month, because their health is poor and they've opted into that other system, and that other system is failing to do anything for them. And so here they are spending all this money, time, effort, and energy, when we would just take that same budget and transfer it over to real food. And then once you get healthy, it becomes so much easier. Is dairy as harmful as gluten? Can be for many, and that's one of the reasons, Raza, that you when you're doing gluten searches, you'll see this term gluten-free, casein-free, right? Because casein proteins, especially from A1 dairy style or dairy types, can mimic gluten, and so in those cases, yeah, it can be just as detrimental. So this is why, if you follow No Grain No Pain, it's a dairy-free diet on top of a gluten grain-free diet for that very reason, for that molecular mimicry or that gluten mimicry. What's the difference between BCAA and UltraAminos? My blood test shows low amino acids. So it depends. So BCAAs are 3 amino acids in a formula blend together. It's valine, leucine, and isoleucine. These 3 amino acids, called branched chain amino acids, are very important for healing and repair. And so if where I would use BCA, if somebody were seeing me, I would use more BCA if somebody said, you know what, I'm trying to get back into exercising, but every time I exercise, I get so sore I can't walk for the next few days, and I'm really struggling to stay consistent in that. That's where I might use BCAs to help them recover from soreness and to repair after workouts. Where I might use UltraAminos contains all of the essential amino acids. So whereas BCA is only 3 of the branched chain amino acids, the UltraAminos is all of the essential aminos. Where we use that is in people who can't digest meat very well. They have a really hard time with digestion, but we need protein. And so we're at a loss, right? Because if they try to eat that protein from an animal source, they do very poorly in the digestive process of that, and so they get gassy, bloated, and constipated. And so we need something that they don't have to digest. And we need lots of protein, and we need the essential building blocks. So we'll use that UltraAmino as a comprehensive amino acid formula to supply their protein as we're making an effort to try to repair their GI tract's functionality to digest better. Let's see here. Go up just a little on that Deb's question there.
Okay, got it.
I play pickleball and my hand goes numb. No question. So wait, is there a question below that maybe? Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, I've not played pickleball personally, so I can't vouch for the wear or tear or any kind of physical trauma that it might induce. But if your hand is going numb, there are a number of different reasons why it could, and one could just be the trauma of the game itself. But I would look at fluid retention being a primary driver for that, fluid accumulation in the hand as you swing the arm to hit the ball. And in that regard, lots of hydration and making sure that you, because natural hydration also can act as a diuretic to help normalize your water, and then electrolytes. Do I sell vitamin E? Yes. The formula that I have that you can pick up is called UltraE. If you're interested in that, let's go down a little bit on that side too. How to add gut flora to gut. Naturally, best way, Cheryl, is probiotics. And where do we get probiotics? We get probiotics from several places. Number one, from food. So fermented foods, a lot of people like fermented cabbage. So it would be sauerkraut, right? Or fermented fermented cauliflower, fermented carrots. Don't recommend kombucha. It's just sugar and alcohol for the most part. It's not a healthy product. It has a healthy connotation, but it fails as being supportive of good health. Don't really recommend yogurts if you're gluten sensitive, again, for the dairy issue. So again, fermented vegetables would be one aspect, and then the other would be get outside. One of the best ways to get probiotics is own a pet that goes outside and actually be outside yourself. There's research coming out now that shows that people that garden have much more tremendous healthy bacterial counts in their GI tract, as well as diversity of bacterial counts in their GI tract. So getting your hands in the dirt. All this nonsense about hyperhygiene over the last 2 years, everybody smattering hand sanitizer over every orifice and surface of their body for fear that their immune systems are not awesome, has really put a damper on the microbiomes of the world. So get out and don't be scared to get a little bit dirty, in dirt. Now, I'm not talking about dirty in public spaces like bathrooms, etc., but dirty in, a garden would be a perfectly great way to get good probiotics. And then beyond that, you can supplement. And, we have several different types of probiotic that's depending on the person, but if you're looking for a really heavy-hitting probiotic with heavy, high doses, Ultrabiotic Defense is what I would recommend. Now, some people don't tolerate some probiotics, and so we have a spore type of probiotic that is very well tolerated by people that have a history of not tolerating probiotics, and that's called Biotic Force. What's the best time to use Ultra Liver supplement, and can it be taken with food? It can be taken with food, and there's not a best time. So morning, noon, night, all good. In my opinion, what's better, AJ asked, what's better for back and neck pain, physical therapy or chiropractic, or both? I do stretches and exercises myself, but I've always gotten more relief from chiropractic. Well, as a chiropractor, I'm a little bit biased to answer that question. Now, I think there's a benefit to both, for sure, but the manipulation aspect for the treatment of neck and back pain is a very, very superior modality with tremendous research supporting its benefit. And so you're not going to get that in physical therapy. The manipulation aspect. Now, you can get physical therapy in chiropractic, meaning if you have a good chiropractor, they actually will teach you and do physical therapy as well as chiropractic care. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds if you have a good chiropractic office where the doctors are adjusting you, but they're also having you do physical therapy as part of your rehabilitative process. I got off grain, and yeah, I like that. Deb says, I got off grain and my fibromyalgia went away. There you go. I was just talking about that earlier, so proof in the pudding. Let's see, do we have, can you scroll down for me or go to the YT, the YouTube? Somebody's asking about varicose veins. So for varicose veins, exercise, exercise, exercise. And then, if we're talking about supplementation, probably the combo of vitamin C and quercetin would be one of the most helpful. And then beyond that, it's all guessing. There are a lot of different compounds that can be helpful for supporting the integrity of the vasculature. But at the end of the day, getting tested so that you know which of those will be more specific for you, because, for example, zinc and copper are important for collagen formation around blood vessels. You've got vitamin K is important, manganese is important. I mean, there's just a number of different nutrients that are going to play a role in that you'd want to know about so that you can appropriately choose. I love that, man. Dahl says, my dad is a mechanic and trades his services for half a cow and half a pig every year. If you live in Texas near Houston, connect with me, because I'm on a farm and, I'm not the greatest mechanic in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And that sounds like good trading to me. Corey, have you had any cases where they got off gluten grains and their varicose spider veins improved? Yes. Do you see a connection between gluten, copper, and varicose spider veins? Yes. So copper, very important, super critical. Copper forms collagen cross-links, and so strengthens and elasticizes collagen so that it stretches and has resiliency. I buy lactose-free milk and make my own yogurt. Is this still no good? Probably. Lactose-free milk is toxic swill. If you're buying it from the grocery store, that stuff is so highly processed, I wouldn't touch it with a 100-foot pole. Yeah, and it's probably not A2 milk either. It's probably A1 milk, which is a big problem if you're gluten sensitive. You know, I just would say if you, first of all, I think, Rita, you were the one with joint pain, so I would cut it out anyway, and I would just see how the joint pain improved, and if it did, you'd have an answer. And if it didn't, and you still wanted to try dairy, then you want to look for A2 dairy, and you want to buy A2 dairy. And if you're lactose intolerant, you shouldn't be using dairy. Like that already, to me, is a no-no, right? Now, some people will take, if you want another alternative, if you really just want to have dairy in your life, we make a product called Dairy Shield. And I'll put that link up for you in the feed. And what that is it's a product that has different enzymes in it that help you break down lactose. And so, but again, it's not ideal, right? I would just encourage you, you know, if you really react to dairy, to try to stay away from it. Yeah, I like that. Betty says, we found local farmers growing what we don't, including meat, and they do it as clean and kind as possible. And their attitude is, animals have a good life, just one bad day. I believe that to be very true. We take really good care of our animals. They're on the brink of being large pets, really, the way my wife loves on those animals. So yeah, I mean, that's just it. You want to respect and honor the lives that they're going to be giving for you, and you want to take fantastic care of them. That's called good animal stewardship. But it's also important because the land stewardship is just as important. And so many people rag the meat industry for being toxic, and I would agree that factory farmed animals where you have these massive feedlots are terrible. They're terrible for the planet, they're terrible for the animals, they're terrible in terms of the quality of the meat for the people that are eating that meat. I mean, they're just scaled agricultural farms that are designed predominantly for profit. And they cut a lot of healthy corners, and they do a lot of things with those animals that aren't healthy for us. And so in that regard, yeah, I would agree. That kind of meat is terrible. But to demonize all of the animal meat and say it's all bad and it all causes cancer is a huge mistake. And remember, the animals play a huge part of the carbon cycle and the life cycle on this planet. And that's part of how, you know, it's part of a delicate balance that was created by a much higher power and a much more intelligent power than any of us. And I think if we go around trying to bastardize that and take it away, I think we're making a huge mistake, a very naive mistake in the name of saving the planet, in which nobody can even show me any science that says that by doing that will save the planet. I would say by doing that, you're going to cause humans that are protein malnourished, that can't think straight, and become psychotic because they're so malnourished they don't have the nutrients to think clearly, and so then their behaviors change over time, and then the population becomes less and less intelligent as a result of being severely malnourished. And then infertility rolls in and the population dwindles and then we all die. And that's not a solution. So, you know, all these advocates for that they're way off base, and they have nothing valid to point out that what they're saying or claiming we should all do is going to work. And if you look at their track record of telling us to do things and then those things getting implemented, it's really quite terrible. I've read that microvilli damage can be seen reflected in a person's fingerprint ridges. That's not anything I've ever made a correlation with. Cause of extreme leg pain that makes you nauseous right before a period. I think mold is a trigger for the leg pain too, but wondering what else can cause leg vein pain. Yeah, you need to get a workup done. I mean, I would wait around and not assess that. Even if you don't have active blood clots because you've had a Doppler or something like that done, you still, that doesn't mean you don't have, you know, kind of microscopic clotting that's occurring. Because a clot you can see in a Doppler, you can see them in a sense, but microscopic clotting not so much. And if you're having that kind of trouble, you know, I don't want that to turn into something more dangerous. So I would definitely recommend that you get that checked out in a deeper manner. Because there's a lot of things that can cause it. In the nutrient realm, tons of things can cause it. Do you know what causes multiple chemical sensitivity? If so, it helps. Yeah, multiple chemical sensitivity is just your body's way of saying get away from chemicals. It's not what causes it. It's think of somebody who's been diagnosed with MCS has been overexposed to all the chemicals, right? And so it's just like if you've ever heard the old adage, the straw that breaks the camel's back, it wasn't one thing. It was all the things, right? And it was all the things overwhelmed your filters. Your kidneys are a filter, your lungs are a filter, your liver's a filter, your skin's a filter, your gut's a filter. And they all got overwhelmed. And when that happened, you became ultra sensitive to pretty much the environment. And that's what MCS is. And so the road back from that is to get granular clarity around 4 categorical things that you have the power to change. One is your food, what to eat, what not to eat. One is your exposure to chemicals, how to protect yourself, what to protect yourself from. Number 3 is your microbiome, having that assessed so that you can seal the barrier, one of the most primal barriers, which is our gut barrier. And number 4, your nutritional status. Those things got to be looked at. That's the road back. Otherwise, you end up chasing your tail from one product to the next, from one piece of advice to the next, without any clear blueprint on what to do or what to follow. And it gets very, very frustrating, and it steals your life, and it steals your vitality. And it's a slow death, and you don't want to be part of that. Okay, let's go down on that side. Answered that. What supplements do you recommend to heal the gut, depending on what's wrong with the gut? So I mean, there are a lot of different things that can be helpful depending on the individual, but it depends on why the gut's being damaged, because it's not a supplement that's going to heal your gut so much as it is a behavioral change. Like newsflash for most people, as I'm not saying that supplements can't be very helpful. I mean, I use them all the time in practice, but if you don't change your diet, your gut's never going to heal, period. And that's just the end of the story. One man's food is another's poison, and if you're eating poison, you're damaging your gut. And so you could take all the glutamine, all the aloe, all the deglycerinized licorice, all the marshmallow root to coat it and line it, and none of those things are going to have long-lasting effect if you don't make meaningful changes to your diet. And you also would want to have your microbiome assessed, ideally, because you could have low levels of good bacteria, or you could have the presence of microorganisms that really are growing out of control, like weeds, and creating inflammatory damage. So there's, a number of variables to that question. So there wouldn't be one product, is my point. There wouldn't be one product. I think a good place to start, honestly, beyond a diet change, would just be a good, solid probiotic. Right, and something like Ultrabiotic Defense, that would be the best place to start. And then from there, depending on how you react or respond, you can go deeper into some other things like glutamine and zinc, especially zinc carnitine and zinc, and zinc carnosine specifically as a type of zinc. And carnitine is very beneficial as well for the gut. So there are a number of different things that could be helpful. But again, I think you're shooting in the dark if you don't know why your gut's damaged. So Mary says, I can never join live, but yet you are, it looks like. So that's great. Welcome, Mary. Since I'm a teacher and I'm in school at these times, but please answer this question. I've been suffering from terrible leg cramps and spasms at night for at least 2 years. 3 doctors have not been able to help. Any advice on what to do? My CK is in the 3,000 range. No one seems concerned. You got to get checked out. You could take calcium and magnesium like CalMag, and we could put a link of that up for you. Because for a lot of people that have nighttime cramping that's persistent, nighttime spasms, that is a short-term solution that can work extremely well. But if your sodium and chloride are also low, you're dehydrated, and if you may be drinking reverse osmosis water, and you may if you're a heavy sweater or you sweat a lot in your sleep, you can be dehydrated. And so getting in, if you're drinking RO like this, I'm drinking RO water right now, but inside, I don't know if we have a bottle up here. Do we have any electrolytes up here? But pick up some Ultra electrolytes, and we'll put that in too. I don't have a bottle up here, but you just add half a teaspoon of the ultra electrolytes to your drinking water, to 20 ounces of water, and drink away. And that's where I would start. But this is not something you want to let go for too long either. So if you've been to 3 docs, you get with somebody functional. You'd probably be better suited to help you in that regard. Okay, let's see. Go down there. Is detoxifying the liver helpful in lowering cholesterol? Christine, great question. I'm going to rephrase your question because I don't believe in lowering cholesterol. I think that's a myth. I think the cholesterol theory of disease is completely biased, wrong, junk science that was designed to sell a lot of statin medications that have had zero benefit on the rate at which people have strokes, heart attacks, or die from them. We have more heart disease today than we've ever had, and statins and lowering cholesterol has done nothing to appease that increase. So I would argue, why are we even trying to lower cholesterol? Now, there are cases, if you have hyperfamilial cholesterolemia, which is a super, super high cholesterol, well up over 350, that's a little different. But if you're just talking about, first we have to define what high cholesterol is. It used to be 280. And then over the years, it's dropped from 280 to 250 to 220 to 200. And now they want to go below 180, and they want to put, fourth graders on the statins. It's horrific, in my opinion. And I think we have to ask, why are the numbers coming down? Why do we keep lowering what normal is? Why do we keep moving the goalpost? Why? Who makes that decision to move that goalpost? You'd be surprised and shocked if you knew that the doctors that were being paid to make that decision to lower what normal cholesterol numbers are were the same doctors that are directly on the payroll or receiving massive quantities of grants and other forms of financial compensation from Merck and Pfizer, the top 2 statin makers in the world, the top 2 grossing drugs of all time, the Lipitor and Zocor. So I would ask a different question, which is, why are you trying to lower your cholesterol? You can go back and watch some of my videos on the cholesterol myth if you want to learn more about that. What do you recommend for Mycoplasma bacteria instead of antibiotics? I would question whether or not you have a Mycoplasma issue. A lot of doctors will blame Mycoplasma for different illnesses, and that's not to say it isn't the case. But I would question that as a diagnosis is kind of the way I would look at it. Now, that being said, you can certainly, if you suspect that to be the case and you didn't, you just were adamant about not doing an antibiotic, you want to do everything you can to support the health of your immune system's ability to regulate the microbiome and vice versa. So good probiotics, micronutrient check to make sure you have all the right nutrients in place, again, to give your body the best immune system strength it can have. Kristen's asking about tendonitis. Had it in my rotator cuff for a few years, but also DDD in neck. You mean degenerative disc disease, I would assume, in your neck and low back, and have had major muscle loss. I mean, that's a monster. So if depending on the nature of the degenerative disc disease, lots of people have DDD and in their neck and back, but it's not why they hurt. It's one of those scenarios where a doctor takes an X-ray or an MRI and says, you have degenerative disc, therefore the degeneration is what's causing your pain. But that sometimes is a scenario of guilt by association, so it may not actually be the reason. I would start just at random, Kristen, with diet change, because unless I didn't see, again, I don't know your full history, but unless you had major trauma, right? So or you were in a car accident or, some kind of a fall where you slipped a disc, injured it, you've got, multi-millimeter herniations and compressing on nerve roots and digging into spinal cord tissue, then probably the degenerative issue is not the issue. And that's what we call non-traumatic pain. Non-traumatic pain is typically autoinflammatory, meaning it's your immune system and it's what you're eating and it's what you're doing that's driving the inflammation. So I'd start with diet change. If you're not already there, start with diet change. Why don't I see the question? Yes, we've been brainwashed. I don't understand what you mean, Deb. Let's see, which is better to do for blood sugar, A1C or nuclear stress test? I'd say neither. A1Cs are limited in their capacity to help you understand fully what's happening with your blood sugar. It's one marker. If you're trying to get a good assessment on your blood sugar, A1C is part of a panel that is important to understand. You should be checking your C-peptide and your fasting insulin and your fasting glucose. You should have a full array or a full workup of micronutrient status so that you know where your chromium and your zinc and your magnesium and your B vitamins are, because they all play a role in the regulation of blood sugar. But just to look at hemoglobin A1C, that's just all that is telling you is your average blood sugar is either high or your average blood sugar is lower or normal. But it doesn't tell you why. So it's just a data set, right? So it's just a point of reference that you can use to monitor the level. But if you're trying to adjust the level or change the level, if you're trying to improve upon it, running that test isn't going to really give you any answers, if that makes sense. And then beyond that, build muscle. Build muscle. You don't have to become a Hulk, but build muscle, because muscle burns glucose as a fuel source even at rest. And if you're under-muscled, your blood sugars on average are going to be higher. Can eliminating Wi-Fi help with pain? Yes, if you're Wi-Fi sensitive. Is there a blood test to see if you're dehydrated? Yeah, I mean, it's called a CBC chemistry panel, and there are a number of markers within that panel that can help us understand whether or not a person is dehydrated, including electrolytes. What's the best help for neuropathy? Depends on what's causing neuropathy. Gluten can cause neuropathy, dairy can cause neuropathy, other foods can cause neuropathy, toxic metal exposure can cause neuropathy, B vitamin deficiency can cause neuropathy, impingement, entrapment syndromes can cause neuropathy, muscular imbalance can cause neuropathy. So if you give me, I mean, it's a very broad question, Sandra, so it's just hard to answer that. If you want to just take a supplement that can help your nerves and support nerve function, you know, probably one of the top two, vitamin B1 and alpha lipoic acid. Those two, hands down, very, very important. But I would even go even further. B1 is super important, but a B complex is really important, because B12 deficiency, B6, folate deficiency can all cause neuropathy. B5 deficiency can cause neuropathy. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is, if you're talking about rheumatological arthropathy or neuropathy, rather, RA as in rheumatoid arthritis, then you got to change your diet. There's no amount of supplementation in the world that will cure RA neuropathy. Now, you may have an RA neuropathy. There's an interesting side note on that. If your doctor has prescribed you, as many doctors, rheumatologists will prescribe methotrexate, and that drug itself can cause folate deficiency and inhibit DNA and RNA synthesis, so it can actually cause neuropathy. And this is one of the reasons why doctors oftentimes will prescribe folic acid in conjunction with using drugs like methotrexate. So you could have an issue where it's the drug-induced neuropathy over time. Other drugs that we know long-term induce neuropathy, high blood pressure medications can do it, blood sugar medications can do it, a number of mental medications for, you know, depression, bipolar, and schizophrenia and other diseases can do it. So, but you got to change your diet. If the active autoimmune disease was driving the neuropathy or the nerve damage, then you got to change your diet. No grain, no pain. It'll change your life. It'll save your life. What's my take on caffeine? Moderation is probably not a problem. A lot of research shows that moderate amounts, for example, of coffee, you know, moderate amounts, a cup a day, actually has longevity benefit. But some people are caffeine sensitive. Some people don't do well with it. Some people's adrenal glands are shot and can't handle it. So I think it's not, don't look at the ingredient as the enemy so much as look at it as from a quantity and from a uniqueness perspective. Flu asks if I drink coffee, and the answer is yeah, I do. I do have, occasionally I have some coffee. And, you know, I'm not opposed to it, again, if you're not allergic to it and if you're not caffeine sensitive. Any clue about how to deal with gallstones? Yeah, get your nutrient status checked and check for environmental chemicals, because your liver might be being overtaxed. And if that's happening, you're not going to have a cessation of gallstones. Some people do a gallbladder flush, which is a mixture of Epsom salt and oil, and that can flush out the gallstones, but you got to find out why they were caused, and that's generally liver issues. And so some people do really well. Magnesium can be very helpful in that regard. Taurine can be very helpful in that regard. I would also look at possibly asking a doctor to do a liver ultrasound to see if you have fatty liver disease, because that's where I see a lot of people having a problem with repetitive gallstones, is their livers are fatty, and it's making their ability to produce bile sluggish, and it's allowing for those stones to precipitate out in the gallbladder. Where do you get the electrolyte? So we can put that link up to the electrolyte in the YouTube feed for DL. I'm concerned about B12 deficiency. My question, if my serum B12 is increasing via supplementation, is that likely solving, or do I still need MMA and intrinsic factor blocking antibody testing? Well, it wouldn't hurt, but even more, I mean, MMA is an indirect marker of B12, not a direct one, so it's not necessarily, it doesn't mean that your B12 is low. It can mean other things. Same thing with homocysteine. It's an indirect marker for vitamin B12, which again can also be helpful. But if you really want to know about your B12 status, my advice is get intracellular testing done. We're coming out with a version of intracellular testing on Gluten-Free Society. That's hopefully maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks away. So we'll be making that announcement. If you're not on my email list, I would encourage you to go to Gluten-Free Society and sign up there. That's when we'll make that announcement via email. But serum 12 levels are not an indicator that the supplementation is solving the problem, because the B12 doesn't work in your serum, it works in your cell. That's where it works, intracellularly. So you need to make sure it's getting into the cell. Okay, let's see. Is chiropractic treatment good for someone who has ankylosing spondylitis? Can be, depends. So the problem with AS is the level of fusion that can occur. So with ankylosing spondylitis, a lot of times the spine will fuse. So you'll have actually outgrowths or projections of bone spurs that come out, and they'll fuse the spine together, creating a very, very stiff and fused spine, which you can't adjust. And so as a chiropractic manipulation, trying to adjust that spine that's been fused, you're limited to the areas that aren't fused. So it depends on how advanced the AS is. If you've got earlier AS where there's no fusion yet, it can be very helpful. But in my experience, the most helpful thing for AS, hands down, is change your diet. I mean, I've seen cases of full-blown AS go in total remission with the no grain, no pain diet, and countless times. I see it on a regular basis. So if you haven't started there, it's always the best place to start. And chiropractic care works even better, right, when you change your diet, because if you're not eating food that's creating inflammation incessantly in your body, then the chiropractic, instead of just being like a temporary pain relief, becomes transformative in your spinal health, because you're not damaging your spine anymore by poisoning it. So you got to change that diet. Super important. Let's see, request on parasites. Yeah, we'll do that in a future show. We'll talk about parasites. That's a good topic. Let's see, we got, can caffeine cause hair loss? I'm super sensitive. It can, through its diuretic action. I mean, I don't know that there are any great studies on caffeine directly causing hair loss, but if we look at the outcome of caffeine on a caffeine-sensitive individual, one of the things it does is it overworks the adrenal glands. And so in that process of increasing stress output, one of the causes of hair loss is heightened stress. And so I would look at, if you're struggling with hair loss and you're super sensitive to caffeine, I would definitely look at that as a potential possible connection. So ideally, yes. Okay, what time is it? I think we are over time. I always go over time. That's all right. I give to you guys, and hopefully you get something out of it. And hopefully together, as you take away from me, you're passing this along to somebody else. Remember, together, that's our goal, is to save 100 million people with real information, with honest information, with empowering information, and not with rhetoric and not with gobbledygook and non-scientific drivel. So hopefully you're helping me spread this word by sharing these videos and sharing our information with people you love and people you care about, and even complete strangers who you think may need your help. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to join me next week. I'll be here Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time for another episode of the Dr. Osborne Zone, and we'll be back again next Thursday for live Q&A every Thursday right here at 12:30. Have a great day.